Hey everyone! This video is meant to highlight the fill function in Photoshop. You may be somewhat familiar with this from your assignments that use layer masks, but I wanted to take a minute to highlight some of the very useful features and powerful aspects of this tool. In order to access the fill features, we first must have a layer selected that we want to be filling, and then we can either go to Edit, Fill, or the quickest key command for this is going to be Shift Delete. When the dialog box pops open, you have a few different options here under the Contents drop-down menu. For your layer masks, remember that your black and white are going to be your most helpful. Your foreground color is going to be whatever you have in the foreground on your toolbar here. So for me, it's this dark green. Your background color is going to be black. You can also choose color, which will bring open your color picker, or in certain circumstances, you can also do history, pattern, or content aware. I'm going to show you content aware in just a minute. Hit cancel, and I'm going to show this in actual demo. So we have a corporate headshot here, and in a lot of our demos, we've been looking at masking out the subject. So I'm just going to do that real quickly to show you how we would have Fill help us out with this. So get any of my selection tools active, and then I can do select subject, and let's see how good it does grabbing her. It did a pretty good job. It got the negative spaces under her arms. Pretty good, but there's a few imperfections here. If I go ahead and create my mask, it automatically has this. Turn off my back layer. Let's say there was some aspect about this that I wanted to bring back. So for example, like her shirt here got a little rough. So I am just going to temporarily disable my layer mask by holding Shift and clicking. And I am going to pull my magnetic lasso just to run along the edge of her shirt here. Swoop, and then click to fill. Re-enable my layer mask. And then I know I want this area to show up. In other demos, we've looked at using the brush tool to color in this space, where we would maybe color this in with white and let our selection limit it. But your very quick solution is just doing Shift Delete and fill with white. Command D to deselect. If there was any other aspect of this that I wanted to bring back or wanted to take out more, such as along her wrist here, let me grab my polygonal lasso this time, and I'm just going to clean up this area. So this is, rather than using our selected mask area and modifying our selection, this is just modifying the actual mask with these quick, easy things. So Shift Delete, fill with white. Oops, sorry. Shift Delete, fill with black this time, because I want it to go away. I lost some of her arm here. It ended up a little choppy. Gonna run right along this edge. Shift Delete, fill with white to bring it back. And that kind of shows you how fill can be helpful just for quickly modifying your layer masks. Using the fill tool can also be helpful if you need to modify the original dimensions of your actual photo. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this layer mask and zoom back out to look at this headshot. Let's look at a real world scenario. I'm going to go back over to my template here for posting on social media about this specific interior designer. She has given me this headshot that I'm going to use for this. I'm going to click and drag my files so that my tabs are side by side so that I can easily drag this headshot into my file. I'm just going to grab that layer, click and drag and drop. That's fine. I no longer need my original. I'm going to go to Window, Arrange, and I'm going to consolidate all two tabs. Zoom back out. I want to place this headshot into this square, so I'm going to rearrange my layers, and I am going to hold Option and click so that it's going to clip her headshot to this actual shape and layer mask here. I'm just going to hit Command T and hold Shift to scale her down. Now, for this type of template, in order to have it completely fill up the space, this is the size her headshot needs to be. Unfortunately, design-wise, this does some weird things, and this is going to be an issue that you might run into a lot of the time, where a photo you're provided doesn't fit within the corporate template you need to be using. This is really common if you are doing social media for an event, if you're doing posters for an event where you have multiple speakers, they are all providing independently sourced headshots. This can be a really common thing that you have to account for. So for this headshot, part of the reason I don't like it in this frame is I don't like how it's cutting off her arm here, and I don't like how it's cutting her off at the wrist and the shoulder here. It just feels too crammed in this space. To actually get her to the point that it feels a little cleaner and a little less awkward, I kind of have to scale it down pretty significantly. But that leaves me with a huge unfilled gap here and here. Let me hit Enter, just to preserve my change. Once I have this where I like it, I'm going to hold Option and I'm going to click between these layers to undo that clipping mask, just so that I can see my whole image as I'm working with it. I'm going to use the Content Aware fill just to fill up this element on the top here. Now, because this photo has some strong architectural elements and some very clear lines, we could get away with just using the clone stamp to recreate this, but Content Aware fill is going to move a lot faster for us. The downside of Content Aware over something like Generative Fill is that Content Aware is based exclusively on the pixels in the actual image, whereas Generative Fill is based on the entire learning engine behind Adobe's Firefly. So I'm going to hold Shift Delete, and instead of white or black like I was using before, I'm going to use Content Aware. And I'm just going to hit OK, and we'll see what type of odd result we get. It did a pretty good job. It did some weird shadows here, and it duplicated part of her hair, which we could at this point fix using the patch tool, Command J, click and select, and fix it. And that pretty much gets us a clean result there. If I hold Option to see how it clips, and it looks pretty nice. Now, that was a couple extra steps involved in cleaning up what Content Aware did. So let's try Generative Fill for the bottom half of her outfit. I have a feeling it's going to be more successful because we're dealing with something more complex like the lace pattern on her dress, and hopefully this will yield a little bit of a cleaner result. For Generative Fill, it does not work when the layer is in this clipping mask mode. So I'm going to hold Option and undo that. And then I am going to draw a selection box down here, move my selection just slightly with my arrow tools, and then I'm going to hit Generative Fill. Because I just want it to fill in its best approximation, similar to Content Aware, I'm just going to leave my actual dialog box empty and just hit Generate. And let's see what kind of result we get. Definitely not the best. Some really weird stuff going on. It didn't preserve the nature of this seam that she had going on here, and it also took too much from the empty parts of the photo. So let me just try Generate to see if any of these look a little cleaner. That middle one definitely is working a little bit better. It preserved the seam in her dress, it's not too choppy here, and it even has a little bit of a contour change from where her leg might be. So let me just close my properties. I am going to select both of my layers And I am going to merge them and then hold Option and then click down. And we can see now that that yielded a really clean result. So if I zoom in a little bit on her skirt, this looks really clean, no major issues here. Consider your final audience. If this is going to be showing up on somebody's Instagram, nobody is going to be looking that closely at the edge of her skirt. One downside of the workflow that I just used was that in order to have this exist the way I needed it to in this specific document, I needed to edit destructively, meaning I merged my generative fill with my original photo. If for whatever reason I did not like that in the future, it would be a little bit harder to go back and change it. But for the sake of something small like this that's going to get posted on social media, I'm not terribly concerned about it because more likely than not, I'm not going to need her photo in this exact format again. If I did know that I was going to need this photo again, I probably would have gone about this a little differently, maybe using her original photo and actually making the edits in here and using a smart object to place this. But for the time being, this is a perfectly acceptable solution and gives you a good look at both the fill tool and the generative fill in Photoshop.